The Profit Constructors presents Construction Junction, the junction between accounting and construction. Please welcome our host, Tanya Schulte.
Hi, and welcome back to another edition of the Construction Junction podcast. I am your host, Tanya Schulte, and I am so glad that you're joining us again today. Have you ever wondered, as a construction company owner or as an accountant in the construction industry, if some of the software developers that you're working with actually get it? Do they understand? Are they listening? Well, today we're going to be talking to a software developer that I think really does get it, does understand, and truly is listening. And it's such a breath of fresh air. There are so many software developers out there who understand a need and maybe dive in to solve the need. But I think it's a rare developer that comes from the background of actually having to work in a construction company to develop the software before they dive in and just start to sort of understand the need and work from outside the industry. Have you ever heard the term eating your own dog food? I had to look it up because I wasn't sure where it came from, and there's actually some discrepancy. Some people say that in the 1970s Alpo advertisements, Lauren Green used to point out that he fed Alpo to his own dogs. Could come from that. Some other people say that Calcan pet food, the president of Calcan actually ate dog food at the shareholders meetings. I don't know. That seems to be taking it maybe a step too far to eat your own dog food. But whatever the case is, you've probably heard the term. And I think in the case of this particular software developer, that's exactly what's happening here, right? When you eat your own dog food, you go out and you understand what truly does your customer need. And not only do you understand what they need from an external perspective, to really eat your own dog food means to understand it from an internal perspective. This particular software developer did that. They actually got down in the trenches, managed a construction company, and began to understand the dearth of software for that industry that really fit, that was affordable, and that could actually get the job done in a way that makes sense to keep the contractor going out in the field, to get things done that the office needs. Like, there's just so many parts and pieces in this industry that must play together well. And so for me, that's one of the most interesting facets and aspects of the evolution of this software. When you think about what you need in a software, I have a good friend. His name is Jim McCarty. He is a construction centric CPA. And one of the things that he says all the time is, I need to make the cash register ring. If I'm a construction company owner, I need to make the cash register ring. And when we're in a retail environment, that's a simple thing to understand, right? So how do I make the cash register ring? Someone walks through the door, they pick up an item off my shelf, and they bring it up to the front and they say they want to buy it. In this industry, while the goal is the same, I need to make the cash register ring, it's not as simple a process to do that as it is in the retail space. And so in terms of making the cash register ring, which I think is one of, if not the most important aspects of what you want the software to help you do, I think this particular solution and software does help you do that. One other thing I want to talk about and point out and highlight before we get into talking to our expert who's coming from this piece of software is the idea that I keep using the term software because I'm a little bit old school. Maybe I might have been around in that decade where Lauren Green pointed out that his dog ate Alpo, but we'll leave it at that. Software is an interesting term these days, something that's changing, and we are moving into a cloud-based world. Here at the Profit Constructors, one of our cultural values is embrace technological progress. Not gonna lie, my business coach says that I'm not allowed to have negative cultural value. So he wouldn't let me keep that cultural value the way I originally wrote it. And again, I'm going to date myself here, but here we go. Our original cultural value in that spot was don't be Kodak. I watched the evolution of Kodak and I actually was an amateur photographer myself back in my high school days, and used to really enjoy going out and taking photographs on film. But Kodak decided, someone in their leadership decided early on in the early days of digital film, again, dating myself, in the early days of digital, that real, quote unquote, real photographers would never embrace digital photography. They were very wrong, right? Now we all know how wrong they were. And so that is one of the reasons why one of our cultural core values has always been that we want to embrace technological progress, because I think it's very important to be looking ahead and to be seeing the landscape and seeing how things are changing, and not be drug screaming off of a cliff and have to change our process overnight or have to change our thought process about something overnight. I think it's very important to be looking ahead and seeing, okay, what is happening in our industry and how can we get out ahead of that? And so the reason I'm bringing all of that up is that this term software is something that really was invented when we bought our hardware, which is the computer that I'm recording this on right now. And then we often would go out and buy the software, which was a disk we could insert somehow into that. Well, I don't know about you, but I haven't bought a computer that I could put any sort of external disk, like slide that disk right in years. Those don't exist anymore. So when we talk about software, like I said, this is sort of this outdated term that's sort of kind of going away because we all are moving into the cloud. And that's one of the things that very much excites me about this particular app, is that they are cloud-based and that the information that is entered into it can be accessed from almost anywhere if you have a good internet connection, and can be utilized real time. Again, if you don't want to be Kodak, sorry, Brian, my business coach. If you want to be able to embrace technological progress, if you want to present yourself as a contractor who understands the latest and greatest technology and knows how to leverage it and use it for the betterment of your clients, then you're going to have to get into that cloud-based world. Not only that, and that sounded almost negative, right? Like you're going to have to get into that cloud-based world, but that's not even how I want it to be taken. You really have this grand opportunity to step into the cloud-based world and to be able to present yourself in a light that other contractors aren't, and to be able to be that contractor that can get some information to your clients at the drop of a hat, that has a selection portal for your clients to select, what finishes they want to have in their remodel or in their new home build. So being able to be that cutting edge provider of services really is going to give you a leg up against some of your competitors. And that's something I think that should be also super important to you above all other things. So what's important to you in an app, not software? What's important to you as we move forward in this technological age, and what types of things can help you make the cash register ring, help you set yourself apart from your competitors, and at the end of the day, help you sleep better at night because you truly understand your numbers and what's happening on each of your jobs? Well, I'm going to tell you when we come back, and you're going to meet a friend of mine who's built just such an app. We'll talk soon.
If you would like to share your company or product on the Construction Junction, email hello@theprofitconstructors.com to become a sponsor.
Welcome back to this segment of the Construction Junction podcast. My name is Tanya Schulte, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my guest today, the founder and CEO of JobTread, Eric Fortenberry. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me on, Tanya.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. I know we've kind of been like chatting with each other online, and I met several members of your team and got to chat with Riley a little bit recently, who's a great person on your team. But it's so great to kind of like really sit down and have a conversation with you finally.
Yeah, I know. It's been a long time coming, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, tell us about JobTread. As you know, I've been kind of, I met Riley about a little over a year ago because we met at last year's International Builders Show up in Las Vegas and kind of got to chatting. And I've had a chance to sort of dive in and play around and do some testing in your software. A little sneak peek. I think a good friend and colleague of mine, Matthew Fulton, are going to do some recording and testing in your software and actually record that. So
Awesome.
that's coming up. So if you're listening to the podcast now, keep an eye out for that. But tell us about JobTread. Tell us sort of what got JobTread going. Tell us the kind of the story of JobTread.
Yeah, so I was just kind of helping a buddy of mine who was running a construction company here in Dallas, Texas. He had asked me to come over, help him figure out how to scale the business. They were, doing about 5 million in revenue at the time, had about 10 employees, but just really, really struggling to break through that $5 million glass ceiling. I think this is their 5th year in business or so. And he's like, "Can you just come over to the office, see what we're doing?" I'm like, "All right, sure, I'll come over and check it out." And I walk in and I see like, papers and binders everywhere. Like it felt very chaotic, if you will, very unorganized. Like, I literally see the timesheets walking in the door, going into this folder, and then, they print off every bill, put it in this, binder, and then they're putting it on the wall, waiting for the project manager to come in. And, whenever that may be, and he would, sign off on it, and then someone would take it and, type it into this spreadsheet, and then that got copied to this other spreadsheet, and then it got manually entered into QuickBooks. And I was just like, holy cow, like my mind's like a little bit blown here, thinking like, wow, like you guys just need some software or something to streamline this business. And that was when I essentially just kind of did a deep dive. I was like, let me just go find you something, and looked at everything out there, made this massive spreadsheet comparing all the features, the pros, the cons, the cost. And at the end of the day, though, like I struggled to make a recommendation for these guys because I felt like a lot of the software out there was either seemed a little bit antiquated, had been started 10, 15, 20 years ago, or it looked like it might take a lot to implement, to customize, or super expensive. And I struggled, to pick one for these guys. And they were like, well, Eric, you're a software developer. Can't you just build us something? I was like, whoa, hold on. I'm not trying to create another one-off that you're going to have to maintain and deal with. Like, you guys are construction guys, not software guys. So me creating something didn't really seem like the best fit. But, eventually they kept pushing me. And, I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And, I ended up coming back to him saying, look, this sounds like, a great opportunity. I told him I'd give him, three conditions, and I was willing to do it. One, I took over as CEO. Two, I give him 1 year. And three, everything I built was my intellectual property. So that if this had the potential to be my next software company, because I had previously built and sold one, I'd have that option, after that 1 year. So they agreed, made me partner, made me CEO. I took over the business and just started at the beginning and started focusing on, let's figure out like, why can we not hit our target profit margins? It was like just a total crapshoot on how we were going to perform on any given job. And so like, I was like, okay, let's just start at the beginning of estimating. How are we coming up with our price? Like what is going into this? And I started shadowing the estimators, and, sure enough, a lot of them are just kind of pulling number out of thin air, just kind of making things up. And, a lot of, buddy deals, back of the envelope type things. Well, push come to shove, they're like, hey, yeah, we agree to the work. Well, hand that off to the project manager. Like, how in the world did you come up with that? So again, it's a total crapshoot on that. And, some of the guys are using markup to calculate price instead of margin. That was a huge, difference. And so I realized, I was like, all right, put away your calculators. And we're going to build what really became the foundation of JobTread, which is the budget. And so every job now has that budget tool where I wanted them to focus on figuring out what are all of the costs that are going to go into this job. Whether it's the labor, the material, the, permits, equipment, anything and everything that you could think of that is going to go into this job. I wanted them to focus on documenting that and having a well-defined scope of work. And then ultimately the software would just calculate the price based on the cost. And I'd say that was probably one of the biggest transitions that we had, but it really helped us to focus on like documenting everything, because we weren't able to even issue change orders because there was nothing defined, when we got into it. And so this was like a huge transition for us. And after, focusing on the estimating, then I turned to the project management, the scheduling pieces, the, leveraging purchase orders and work orders to track our cost in real time, doing all the job costing, and then kind of at the last phase, it was really integrating with QuickBooks. And, it was, I should have started there. Like when I stepped into this business, we had over $800,000 of AR, like almost $1 million of hard-earned money that we weren't even focused on collecting. Like, to make things worse, the owners, they kept taking, the AR, and they would go back to the bank and they were collateralizing that AR, and they were taking out $200,000 lines of credit one after another. And I was just like, guys, hold on. Like, this is crazy. Like we had already earned the money, but we were going to have to write off so much of it because we never followed up.
Yeah.
And that's, it kind of got me like, well, how did this even happen? Right. And so, I found that field guys, they would tell we had one person in the office. She was awesome, but like, you can only do so much, doing AR, AP, and so they would say, hey, can you send that invoice? Well, she would send it, but then, she just assumed that the field guys would be able to follow it because she was dealing with everything else. Well, they had no visibility into QuickBooks, so they had no idea if we got paid or not. So they were both sort of looking at each other and assuming the other one's doing the follow-up. Nobody did the follow-up. And consequently, we just, ended up with hundreds of thousands of dollars of AR.
Yeah.
So that's where I was like, all right, we got to integrate this with QuickBooks, automatically creating the invoices, having that payment status go back and forth. So the neat thing out of this whole thing is that we built JobTread out of a needs basis. It was created, as I was running this construction company firsthand, understanding like what are our challenges and like how do we need to solve these to get a much better, much more well-run construction company. And at the end of that year, we grew them from 5 to 8 million in sales, increased our gross profit by 43%. Lo and behold, you implement a system, processes, you track the right KPIs, you can hit your goals. You just got to, go about it in the right way. And, it was, that was in 2018. So started JobTread officially in 2019, recruited some developers from my last company. They came on, rebuilt everything, did a much better job than what I did creating it. But we started selling it in 2021, got it to, it was like 200 companies. 2022, we got it to around 1,000. 2023, I think we ended around 2,200. Our goal was 2,000. We got to like 2,200. This year, our goal is 4,000, or it was 4,000. We've already passed 3,000. So I think we're going to need to up our goal a little bit. But, it's just been really taken off.
Awesome. I love that. I love the whole story. I love your concept that you were saying you built it from a needs basis, right? Like you were in the day-to-day work. I think that's one of the best founder stories I've heard in terms of like a software for the construction industry, because it is so hard sometimes to come in as a developer with no understanding or basis in this industry and really truly understand the needs of the industry. So
yeah, there's definitely a lot of software gets built with people who don't fully understand the needs and understand like, what it's like to be in those roles and those positions. I mean, it's something that, I feel very strongly about, being able to build something while you're using it so that you can truly understand it.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. You said quite a bit of stuff in there that I want to dive into and learn some more about. You said when you first started researching what's out there, and believe me, you know me, been there, done that. I want to touch every piece of software that's out there for the construction industry and find out, right? I always want to know what's out there and what's available for contractors to use. So I've touched so many of them myself.
Yep.
But one of the things that you said was that there were so many that were either antiquated or hard to implement or expensive. So I'd love to find out, like, how does JobTread solve for all those things? Obviously, it's new, it's fresh, you just built it not that long ago. But how do you like kind of solve for all those things you were finding that didn't quite work with those other softwares?
Yeah, I tell people all the time, look, we're not reinventing the wheel. The fundamentals of managing a construction business, they haven't really changed. We're just leveraging modern technology. We're able to build an easier to use, easier to learn, much faster application that, it's just more intuitive, compared to what people may be used to. I mean, the Facebooks and kind of the standard, Gmail and all those things that people are used to using this day and age. We're able to take a lot of those kind of designs and those concepts to try to implement and make it feel a lot more kind of what they're used to using versus kind of that old, Windows 98 or DOS looking interface or something super antiquated. Everything is tied together in a much more seamless experience, so that you're not re-entering the same information over and over. I mean, I saw a lot of those systems where, you create, your budget or you do your estimate. And then when you come in to create your purchase orders, your work orders, you're having to re-enter all the same information over and over and over again. And so with us and with JobTread, I mean, it's all linked back to that budget. And so you can just seamlessly select the things that need to be on a document and just add them to it. You don't have to re-enter the information. I think that also one of our approaches that's different than a lot of others is that, we're what we would call like an API first company. So, from the very beginning, my co-founder is really, really big on making sure that everything we do, is done first at an API level. And what that means is, and not to get too techie here, but like that's like an application programming interface. So our user interface, the application that people use, is built on top of our own API. But what this really does is this makes it easy for us to be able to connect and integrate with other systems. We're not this like closed gated, like, you have to use it this way. We enable, other software applications. I mean, really even our customers, if they want, some of them do, to build and extend the functionality of JobTread beyond what you can do within our interface. I think in this day and age, it's so important for, software companies to really understand that, like, we don't have to do everything, and we can't do everything. I mean, we could try, but it wouldn't be great, and so I believe very, very strongly that, like, it's important that, we're able to play well with others, and that, what construction companies needs is one connected ecosystem of all of their software and their applications. And so information can seamlessly flow from one to the other without having to be manually re-entered, without having to worry about, fat fingering issues and typos and things not, going back and forth. That's the real power of, an API based, software. And so I think that that's been a huge differentiator for us. A lot of people don't really fully like kind of grasp what that means, but it enables us to integrate with other applications. And so we've been very, very big on that. And, it's been really neat seeing other companies are now building applications like into JobTread without us having to do much at all, which is awesome. A lot of times, like, we do build the integrations ourselves, like with QuickBooks and things like that. Obviously, like we need to make sure that that's built, very, very kind of, kind of natively within our application. But other things can be built and extended on, based on the, the customer's wants and needs. And I think that's a really, really neat differentiator between us.
It is. It's amazing. It's actually one of the things that I've been arguing for the entire lifetime of our accounting firm, the Profit Constructors, is that's, to me, one of the great benefits of moving forward into this cloud-based world, is being able to have that app ecosphere where everything is talking to each other. I've argued for a long time that a lot of the construction firms that were really tied to QuickBooks Desktop and they were reluctant to give up and move into QuickBooks Online were giving up a lot of functionality, because once you pair QuickBooks Online, which is rightfully so quite limited, once you pair it with another piece of software that's actually built for the industry that you work in, whereas QuickBooks Desktop never was, it was just built for accounting. Once you pair QuickBooks Online with all these other apps, and in your case, you're doing the same thing. You've got JobTread sort of now functioning as that like center hub of, and then you have these spokes of the wheel, right? So I love that. I think that that's one of the most brilliant facets of this new cloud-based world that we live in, is having the ability to have these softwares integrate almost seamlessly, right?
Yeah. And in real time too, it's like being able to just, like, when something happens over here, it's instantly over there. Like, I mean, there's tremendous value in that. With QuickBooks Desktop, you're waiting on the sync schedule and having to use the web connector. I mean, like, I would say, like, we did, and we do have an integration with it.
Yes.
But man, it is a whole different, ball game, compared to being able to integrate with web-based software. I think, it's just a huge challenge, and people don't, I think it's hard for people to understand what they're missing when they haven't actually experienced the benefits of, the whole cloud-based software and just the instant, communication between the two. But I don't regret integrating with the QuickBooks Desktop, but I sure wish everybody would move over. I do feel like early on for us, like, it really opened the door, because again, several years ago, I saw so many companies that were on it, and it really was like the larger builders, who were on QuickBooks Desktop. They'd tell you, absolutely, we're not leaving, we're not changing. And it's like, so finally we're like, all right, fine, we'll go figure this out. And luckily one of my developers was willing to dive in and do it. But we've essentially, we've actually been, like, Intuit has asked us to stop adding features, to the desktop version probably like around a year ago, because they also, see the challenges with supporting that. It's just so hard when, we can't get access to any of the logs or any of the information. It's all on whatever computer or server that desktop version is being hosted on. So
Yeah.
I do think it'll, eventually people will be forced to move over at some point.
Yeah. Actually, one of our cultural values at the Profit Constructors is embrace technological progress, right? And it's the whole idea of not losing sight of that. Like some technology is just going to go out the door. And so
Yeah.
you have to be looking forward and making sure that you're available and ready to use the next piece of technology.
And I would encourage people to do that before the door has been slammed shut on you. You don't want to be put into a position where, hey,
Right.
now I, just can't use this thing that we've been operating in our business on. It probably, I see people, gives them a little bit of peace of mind to be able to kind of run, and try things in parallel before making the full jump over. But
Right.
I think it's always better to not wait till that doomsday is actually here.
Right. No, I 100% agree and counsel clients on that all the time. Another thing that you said that is near and dear to my heart that I really love about JobTread is the whole idea of budgets based estimating. I came from the corporate construction world where I was blessed to work in a number of corporate accounting departments and kind of got to see how really well-oiled machines can run and how that works really well. And I was always surprised when I started working with smaller construction companies to find out that a lot of their estimators didn't start with budgets. It just still to this day kind of blows my mind of how you could estimate without having any idea of what your costs are going to be. So give us some more of your theory around that as well and why you also think that's so important to start with the budget.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's if you don't know what is going to go into a job, how could you ever accurately price that job? I mean, so okay, well, let's unpack that a little bit more. So, one way you could do it is if you were, essentially had pre-negotiated, hourly rates, daily rates. Okay, so, fine, you can kind of come up with an estimate for how many days it'll take you, or how many hours it'll take you. I mean, that's one approach. I found though that trying to run your jobs, time and material based, is a very, very challenging thing in and of itself.
Mhm.
But when you don't know what is going to be in that budget or what's going to be included in that job, then like I said earlier, like when you get into the job and then something comes up, well, how's the customer supposed to know if that was supposed to be included or not included?
Yeah.
Having a very, very detailed, budget, scope of work, kind of predefining what you are including in this contract and in this job. I mean, you really, you can't run a job like, you shouldn't run a construction company by not having the details, behind every single job, because all it takes is one contract, one job to go south where you don't have yourself protected. And now that customer's saying, look, this is on you. You got, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of unknown, work that now has to be, completed, and no contract or some, very vague contract that again, it is a huge liability and a huge risk for you as a business owner to enter into that. And so there's so many reasons that I think it's very important that you take the time to do the takeoff, to accurately, come up with every single piece of that job. And again,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that like you have to know everything that's going to happen, because you can still use contract language, around unforeseen circumstances, around, price escalation clauses. If the, your price of steel goes up tomorrow, there are ways that you can protect yourself in these situations. But like, if you don't have that budget and that foundation, then it's very hard when you do get into those tough times to be able to fall back on that and have, a little bit more of a defense there, for how you came up with that. And so,
Mhm.
our approaches, and again, I believe that, it's something that you should be able to come up with is your cost. Whether you've bought that material before, whether, you've paid, your subs or these people that you're using to do the work. Like, you could send out bid requests, you can, collect real-time pricing, like whatever it may be. Take the time to understand and to price out, the job and what it's going to cost you, so that you can then accurately, add your margin on top. So if you want to make, 30% profit margin on this job, then you actually need to mark up, if you're going to use markup, that's a 43%
Yes.
markup. We were targeting a 30% profit margin, but the guys were only marking up their cost 30%, which was
Mhm.
really only going to get us a 23% profit margin. And
Yes.
so like, it's very important that like, again, detailing everything out instead of just coming up with numbers in the back of the envelope, it also is going to help you when you get into the scheduling phase of it, and you're ready to figure out, okay, who do I need to come in here? Or what materials do I need to order? What lead time do I need on these materials? Like, again, having that already kind of built out in a budget is just such a powerful tool. And that's how you can scale your business. When I first took over that construction company, we could manage anywhere from 10 to, maybe 15 concurrent projects at a time, depending on the size. When 1 year later, like we could manage like 60, 70, 80 projects at one time without, we barely hired anybody either. Like, but we were able to then see, and as an owner and as kind of the person in charge, like I went and I focused on the jobs that were either over budget or they have overrun the schedule. And then that's how I could go and just focus my time to make sure that we can, get those jobs back on track, but without having all of that defined at the very forefront going into that job, then I couldn't compare how are we doing? How are our actuals compared to our budget? What is our projections looking like? Are we going to hit this? Are we going to be way over? Like something isn't right. And so having that budget, we throw the flag. When you see numbers in red in JobTread, that means something is not right. You are over budget. You need to go and drill into that and figure out why did that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I said. It always amazes me when folks don't have that budget first mindset and they'll just sort of throw the estimate out. And I'm always surprised when they say, well, can't we work backwards from the estimate? And I always go, I don't know how to do that. I don't know where you came up with the numbers for the estimates. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly how we would work backwards. So I just always think that's an interesting mindset.
And it's like, if you don't have that, then how are you ever going to know, how did you perform? I mean, like in order to like, if you truly want to stop, making the same mistakes over and over again, then you need to be able to implement changes. And so, I'll give you another example. When we sold like fencing jobs, and whenever we sold these fencing jobs to, it was a commercial, customer, but they had a bunch of locations. So whenever we sold fencing jobs into Houston, we would lose 10 to 12%. And again, I take over the business. I'm wondering, what in the world is this? Like, I suspected some fraud or some kickbacks. I had no idea how that was happening, and it took forever. But ultimately, I was able to drill it all back down to, we were using outdated material costs for the actual fence, and we were just basically paying this multi-billion-dollar company to put up their fences.
Yeah,
we're like losing money, but nobody ever saw it because we couldn't compare. We had no idea if we came in under budget, over budget. What is the actual compared to the estimate? If it doesn't exist, how can you continually improve your business? And so that's why it's so important. Like, we were able to then go and immediately fix the issue. Okay, here is the correct cost for that material, and every job moving forward. Sure enough, now we're making the profit margin.
Right. Yeah, and it's so interesting as well. You were talking about understanding the difference between markup and margin. That's another big one where I will step in and start working with clients all the time, and they'll say, I don't understand every single job that we estimate, we are guaranteed to make 30% profit on, but we're still like losing money. It's like, well, how are you guaranteed to make 30% profit? And it's usually two pieces. One is they don't understand the difference between markup and margin. And the other is they're never taking into account any sort of overhead that they still have to pay at the end of the day, right? So they always consider the job profit, gross profit, to be net profit, and that's just not how it works at all. So if you don't even have, like you said, if you're not even tracking anything from a budgetary standpoint, there's no way to even start to make any of those other changes because we have really no idea what's happening. We can't understand where the money is going.
Yeah, and I think being able to leverage the gross profit margin is such a great tool because one, when you set out on a job, here's what I'm expecting to make, and then throughout the entire job life cycle, you can compare how are you tracking relative to your expected profit margin. I mean, if you log in and look at any of your accounting statements and look at your QuickBooks, your income statement, like, markup is nowhere to be found.
Right.
Markup is literally just a nice little easy formula. It's super easy for people to say, okay, like, I got $100 and I want to mark it up. Well, 100 times 1.3 is going to mark it up 30%. But like, it's a little bit harder to take 100 divided by 1 minus 30%. So it's a little bit harder to do the math. But like, it's such a great tool that you can use to benchmark your progress and your performance throughout the entire job, instead of just, again, you markup used at one time and then it's gone. Like, it's totally worthless after that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'd like to kind of switch gears if you don't mind. I want to find out from you, Eric, who do you think is your ideal target market? One of the things that we talk about all the time is that I'm often asked, okay, hey Tanya, you're the construction industry expert for accounting. Which software should I use for my construction client? And I can't just answer that off the cuff because a lot of different construction software is built differently and it's actually built for different segments of the industry. It could be anything from a service-based company that's just going out, repairing toilets or HVAC systems all the way up to a large commercial general contractor and a lot of different things in between. So kind of how do you guys view your target market in that industry?
Yeah. So, when I originally set out to build JobTread, the interesting thing I still remember, I think it was 2019 or whatever, when I went to the International Builder Show, and it's kind of walking around looking at everything, trying to sort of conceptualize all of this, and I had somebody, I can't remember who it was probably one of our competitors, told me, it's like, you have to either choose, are you going to be for home builders, or are you going to be for remodelers? Are you going to be like, and so it was such an interesting thing that I was like, well, from my perspective, I mean, a construction job is a construction job. Like the size, whether you have one line item or 1,000 line items, or you're doing something simple, or you're building a commercial building. Like, I wanted to very intentionally design JobTread to be able to meet the needs of any construction based business. Now with that being said, like, sure, service jobs are not currently like our forte. They're not our strength. Like, I think for any job that like you're custom bidding, like you're going into every job, and it's not just, hey, here, I'm going to come and mow your lawn, right? And you're going to pay me $50 every single time. I mean, I think that's where, like, a jobber, or a service titan or something, where it's just very much more about kind of, that dispatching, that scheduling, those service calls. Like, I think, that might not be our strongest, suit there. I mean, we just
Yeah.
not there yet. But like, if you're wanting to, again, build a house, build a kitchen, build a deck, anything where you're coming in and you're having to custom bid that out, you're having to come up with and do a takeoff and build a budget. You may start from templates, and that's great. That's very much encouraged, but like, it's a custom job for each one of your customers. That's where I think, it was very important that we wanted to be able to meet the needs of again, a very small, just handyman type, small budget. If you want to have one line item for your budget, fine. I don't recommend it, but you could have one line item for labor, one for material, if that's your thing. But it should be able to go all the way, up to being able to support, home builds, commercial buildings, whatever it may be. Like, so we have very intentionally designed JobTread to meet the needs of all of those construction based businesses. But I will say, as it kind of turned out, like, right now, I would say about 85 percent of our customer base is residential focused. So we have found that one, it's very, very large. There are just hundreds of thousands of residential contractors out there. Yes. The commercial space, we do have a handful of commercial customers, but there are a few additional needs that we very frequently hear about, wanting to be able to export into, AIA format, the G702, 703, it's probably the number one thing that we hear, from people. And I've talked to AIA.org, the group that has the AIA form. And, I've asked them about integrations, and, I think they do have something now that they could do, but it's a pretty expensive, yes, fee for our builders to be able to use that. And so, all of our current commercial guys are like, look, we already have our own format. We're not paying them per job. So you just keep doing what you're doing, and we'll just take it and put it in that format when we need it. So we haven't kind of gone into as much of that realm. I mean, and I know there's like some very, very intricate, RFIs, RFPs, kind of going through some of those processes where, again, I mean, a Procore is very, very strong at having that, kind of that very in-depth kind of back and forth, for some of the commercial, requirements that are there. But, at the end of the day, our sweet spot, I mean, the largest kind of bulk of our customer base, I mean, it's probably, remodelers, hands down. We have more, an interior, kitchen and bath, home additions, kind of, things like that, kind of remodelers. Yeah. And then the next biggest segment would probably be pool builders, home builders, deck builders, outdoor living, but remodelers are certainly the largest group, and kind of one other thing that I sort of differentiate too, like what I've seen is that the more trades that are involved in your projects, the much harder it gets to kind of coordinate everything. So
Yes.
when if you got to you got to come and you got your demos, you got your concrete, you got your framing, you got your interior finish out, you got your plumbers, your mechanicals, like the more different trades, that's where I think the value of JobTread just astronomically goes up, because we can help you not only coordinate the financial aspects and the job costing, the POs, and assigning out the work, but the scheduling pieces of it, the communication aspects, sharing all of that information, having one place, becomes just even more valuable the more, people that you're trying to keep involved and coordinate.
Yeah. No, I think that's huge. And that's why, earlier, something that I had said about this is one reason why I feel like it's so much better for our clients and commercial contractors and residential contractors who are trying to coordinate all that stuff. It's so much better for them to have a solution like JobTread that can handle not only some of the job costing and all of those types of things, but also what you're talking about, the project management piece. That's a much better use of resources, in my opinion, than having QuickBooks Desktop, which is taking up a lot of space, but you can't do all of those other things in QuickBooks Desktop, right? So it's very disjointed and disconnected. And like you said, you guys have that integration with QuickBooks Desktop, but that is going to come to an end. And I think that we're looking at what the future of this is going to be. And I think it's a much better future. I think that there's so much more that can be done in the terms of automation and efficiencies and keeping all of that in one organized system. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and just to kind of touch on that a little more, I mean, like, the number one thing that I heard was holding people, back from switching was all of the desktop reports that were available. I mean, they really like, some of the WIP report and some of the different kind of, job costing reports that they sort of kind of hobbled together, but that worked well for people because they've been doing it for so long, and so
Right.
that's why, it was probably maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago or so, we spent a lot of time and focused on building out. And I worked with a lot of, bookkeepers and accountants to really help us understand the needs for that WIP report. And, and so I think that what people would tell you today is like, you don't need to worry about losing those kind of construction reports that you may feel like, you had on desktop, but wouldn't have on QBO. At the end of the day, like, Intuit is not for construction. It's for every type of business out there. And so
Right.
you really need a software that's, specialized in your industry. And that's where you can leverage JobTread to view all of the job costing, being able to understand, by cost code, how you're performing, by cost type, by, all of the WIP, the work in progress, so that you can see, how are you, doing across all your jobs, or, are you over invoice, you under, like, we give you those tools because we're construction specific and have been able to set that up. So like, you're not losing that by going, by leaving desktop and going to QuickBooks Online.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And you're right. I do think it was the one that and probably some time tracking payroll related things. I know that a lot of people really love how desktop does job costing from a labor standpoint because it is so integrated. But
Yeah.
again, if we're finding that sort of cohesiveness because we're using something like JobTread, then that's something else. It just goes out the window. Now we're getting job costing on labor right within JobTread. So
Yeah.
I love that. Talk to me some more about the templates. You just sort of like glanced on like you could templatize things, right? And I think that is so helpful again in the aspect of like automation, efficiency, scale. How do you guys utilize templates and what's your thought process around that?
Yeah. So, I tell people, look, I mean, my recommendation is when you first get into JobTread, like, however you're doing it today, whatever spreadsheets or whatever system, whatever it is, like, I encourage you to share that with your customer success manager on our team, like, and we will help you essentially get that set up as a template in your catalog, or if you don't have that, because, again, a lot of people that just don't have that, once you build out that first job, if you like it, if you think it was a good kind of, good job budget that you built out, you can save it as a template into your catalog. My belief though is like, again, like, I realize every job is going to be a little bit different, but if you can have the same starting point, it's a much better approach to include everything that you may possibly need and then remove the things that you don't, than to potentially forget things that ultimately are going to come out of your pocket, unless, somehow, again, you can get a change order for it. But I mean, even little things, like I can't tell you the number of times we forgot to include permits. We forgot to include our equipment costs and our rentals and things. It's like, have that in the template so that you can very quickly generate those new, jobs and build out those budgets and have that starting point. And furthermore, if you want to take it to the next level, like one of the really neat things that we also have is the ability for you to use formulas and to create parameters that can very, very quickly enable you to create a job, bring in the template. And let's say you wanted to, maybe you want to, maybe you're building a deck and you want to have kind of my linear feet, for the perimeter. You can just pop those in there. Maybe, how many stairs are you going to include? Do you want to include railing? Like, you can fill out kind of this very short form of all these parameters. And then if you have done the formulas on the cost items, it can just instantly do your quantity takeoff from those few inputs. And so like that furthermore just like really streamlines this process, to get you to the point where you can very quickly build this out. And that's where like leveraging, unit cost, unit price, being able to understand your cost per, square foot, per linear foot, per cubic foot. Like, when you have all of this data, you can start to really understand and really refine and kind of narrow in exactly what your cost should be. So that's going to really improve and streamline your estimating, because you can now just kind of drop in a few numbers and the whole thing's built out for you. I mean, we have countless, hundreds of our customers, like, this is the number one, their favorite features that, they went from spending days, to build out an estimate to now like minutes.
Yes.
And they can do it right there on the job site. You pull up your phone or your iPad or tablet and you just new job, pull in the budget, plop in the few different numbers you need, and bam, there you go. Now you got a ballpark price. Maybe you want to go in and kind of refine a few things later, but like, it just very, very seamlessly, creates that. And I encourage people, like, I think it's so important, people buy from people they like and people that are responsive and easy to work with. And so one of those things is being responsive. I mean, how many times have you had a contractor come out to your house and then say they'd send you something, and then they never do, and now you're following up with them? Like, that's why they're going to go to the next person and keep going and shopping, because, contractors just, typically aren't getting back to them very quickly, or if at all. And so by making this a very seamless process, like, do it in your truck, do it right after, like, get that out there. I mean, I'm not saying cut corners, and I'm not saying make up numbers, but when you've set yourself up for success, then you're going to be able to be so much more responsive than that next guy. And you're going to win so many more deals if you can just come in, give that customer a great experience, meet them, from their budgetary standpoint, be the one that's easy to work with, allow them to e-sign. Bam, you just collected the order before they could even figure out who to call next.
Yep. No, 100%. I was over here grinning because you brought up something not necessarily from the standpoint of the software we're talking about today, but one of the reasons that we chose the pool guy that we did when we had our pool redone a couple years ago was because we met him at a home show, and I said, okay, do we have to schedule for you to come out and measure the pool, or what do we have to do? He goes, no, we use the same software that roofers use to see the roof on your house. We just measure it from the air and we'll send you a quote. And it was brilliant, right? I was like, why don't the other pool guys do that? Why do I have to take time out of my busy day? Why can't you just look it up on whatever they're using, Eagle Roof, or measure it out and give me a quote, right? And so, yeah, it's exactly what you're saying, that people want ease, they want convenience, and they want someone who actually is responsive, cares, does what they say they're going to do. And by taking process and putting that process into your business, you can just move the needle so much.
And I think, one of the things that I really love about JobTread too is that we give you the ability to share as much detail or as little detail as you want. I'm not a big proponent of giving a breakdown of your labor, your material, your unit price, like, but again, if you're doing a commercial job, when we ran commercial jobs, we were required to give them a unit price, by trade, because that's how they would keep all of us. That's how they beat up all the different vendors and subs, is because they know, and they have a not to exceed, unit price per every single thing, but like, again, like being able to say, hey, here is a detailed scope of work and a breakdown. Now maybe you're not given the price breakdown at every single line item, but like, they see that you have a true understanding and that you're very organized and detail oriented. Like, that's so important this day and age when they're comparing you to the guy, the chuck in a truck who's got, a cheaper price, written on a, piece of paper versus a very detailed, here's everything we're going to do. Like, people, as much as everybody sometimes thinks people, are looking for the cheapest solution, That's not the case, because this is their dwelling. This is their number one most valuable asset, is their home.
Yes.
They want a quality project. Now, yeah, they might want to make sure, and it needs to be within their budget. But that's the cool thing about JobTread too, is that you can give them the ability to make their own selections.
Yeah.
Hey, here's the good, better, best model. Pick the things that that work for you. The most important things, you get the best. The other things, maybe it's just the good. You get to kind of configure that, and instead of haggling the contractor on price, the customer, the end consumer there gets to choose the things that fit within their budget. They're controlling the price of the job by making selections that they can afford.
Right. And not taking any time out of the contractor's day to go and manually make any of those changes on the back end. Yeah. I love all of that. So the one last thing I want to talk to you about is, because this is the Construction Junction, and our tagline for the podcast is where construction and accounting meet. You guys actually have a fairly new program that you've just rolled out where you're doing accounting partnerships. Tell us something about that and how you're working with accounting partners now.
Yeah, so we again, we see all these kind of accountants that are helping construction companies. Probably the number one thing that I see when a construction company signs up is they need help with their books. They either don't have anybody, they have nothing, they're using a spreadsheet, or their spouse, who is just not qualified to be their accountant.
Or
Is
really
trying
tired and doing it after they're done at their other day job too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, the number one thing we see is that people need help with their books, getting organized. And so, it is something that's very important, that we want to help get, them connected with qualified bookkeepers. But, our challenge was that, the ones that we kind of knew, because we see them getting added to all these different people's organizations, like they basically got tapped out, and like there's only so many clients that anyone can take on any given month. And so, we realized that it was very important to continue to build this network of accountants who understand job costing. They understand software. They're able to go through.
Nope.
Did we freeze? Are we there?
Nope, you're here. You're good.
All right. So yeah. So I don't know why my screen's frozen. So we built this program to essentially help bookkeepers and accountants to be able to come in, learn JobTread. We actually put together a full certification program that will help them to get bookkeeper certified on JobTread, and then that will allow them to be able to then get added to our marketplace, so that we can promote them to others who are looking for their services.
I love it. I think one of the things that really excited me about that, when I was talking with one of the guys on your team a week ago, Riley, is the idea that it's a really great way to connect like-minded service providers, right? Because it's always surprising to me when people just reach out and say that they need a bookkeeper, and they may call me on, I'm a pro advisor listed on Intuit's pro advisor site, and Intuit asks you to list your specialties, and I've listed one on my pro advisor site. It's construction. But people still reach out all the time because they've seen our name there, and they'll say, hey, we're at this retail shop down the street from you. Can you do our books? Right. We end up referring them on to others that we know that do retail really well. Yeah. But I love that, like, by being listed on your marketplace, they, one, have to be certified in JobTread and have to be at least like-minded enough to understand the processes that are happening in JobTread. Right. So
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
It's a really brilliant way to find the right people.
And frankly, it's also been a great way for us to be able to have, a great, kind of pulse on, how do we need JobTread to function from a bookkeeping standpoint, being able to have these partnerships with these bookkeepers and accountants, like, they have made countless improvements, based on their feedback. And so it's like, I hear from people that, some of those other companies out there, like they don't want to listen to or value, an accountant's feedback. And I'm just like, that's crazy, because like, they're the ones that are working with dozens and dozens of clients. Like, that feedback is not just, representative of one client, that's representative of a whole group of them. And, very often it's going to be, kind of a similar thing that others may have that same feedback. So, I think from that standpoint, it's been really helpful. And then, again, we see, a lot of people when a bookkeeper is like, hey, they work with us with one of their clients. They're like, well, I got a whole, dozen more, that are using something else that like, I'd like to move them over. And so like, this has also sort of opened up this tool, where you can like, very easily switch between all of your clients. And we're going to continue improving kind of the onboarding process so that like, a lot of times they want them to be set up the exact same way, the same kind of cost codes and the same cost types. And, maybe even, if they want to provide, the catalog or not, kind of depending, but like there's ways that we can further streamline that so that, again, like the whole goal is that we can help, get somebody migrated over and get them up and running as quickly as possible. And then anytime that bookkeeper needs help, we're here. They have a direct connection, so whether it's, the client coming directly to us, or if the client goes to the bookkeeper, well, maybe the bookkeeper needs some support or whatever, like, they have a direct phone number, their customer success manager is there to help them just like any other client. And so I think that's like a great resource, for them to have, just knowing that you can instantly get help. I mean, I'm sure you've tried to get, Intuit and some other people on the phone for help, and it can be a little bit challenging. Well, at least you've got someone else, and we have kind of, that other, sort of avenue to kind of help if there ever are any integration or sync issues, or just general, trying to figure out how this would work or that would work.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today, Eric. How can people find out more about JobTread?
Yeah, so I'd probably suggest just going to our website, www.jobtread.com. We've got a ton of information on the website, a lot of videos. You can also watch YouTube. We've had, I think, hundreds of videos on YouTube there. But, I'd encourage you, look, if you're interested in learning more, just hit the schedule a demo button right there at the top of our website. We are happy to take the time, to walk you through the product, make sure it'd be a good fit. I think that's something that's like very, very important to us is making sure, that we are people behind the software. We are here. Every single person on my team is located in Dallas, Texas, in our office. We're not outsourced or spread out. We do every single thing in-house. My entire customer success team. So whenever you create your JobTread account, you'll automatically get assigned a customer success manager. The entire customer success team has experience in construction. We very much understand, how, you need the software to work, what you're doing, kind of what the industry specific, kind of, features are. And so we can be, a great resource to help you, migrate over or, get set up, whatever it may be. I would encourage you to tap into those, resources. We've got a phenomenal onboarding and training program too. We do live trainings every day. Our director of learning and development, she actually has a doctorate degree in organizational change management and leadership. And so she has put together this awesome, online training curriculum. You can either watch it live or you can, watch the recordings if that's easier. And then we also have our certification programs. Once you get signed up, like you can go through, I think there's JobTread Estimator, project manager, bookkeeper, as well as the admin one. So, a lot of great resources are out there, but we'd very much appreciate the opportunity to show you JobTread and to hopefully work with you and help you get up and going.
I love it. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we will talk again soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me, Tanya.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you for tuning in to Construction Junction. To find out more about the junction between accounting and construction, please email hello@theprofitconstructors.com.